Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Waters Above. Today's the day, the solar eclipse that we've been waiting for. I have so much to get into in today's video. This will be packed with gems, so get your pen and some paper. You're going to want to take notes today. This is a very special video exposing a very unique way of analyzing these markets, so you're not going to want to miss a second of this, and I strongly recommend watching all the way until the end. If you've been following my work for some time, you know that I rarely start out a video like that. I don't hype anything up. I'm always calm and composed in the delivery of my message. But for today's video, I'm going to piece together several layers of how this crypto market operates, and I really want you all to get the full value out of this presentation. So invest your attention into this. The value from the return on that investment could be a game changer. And a very important reminder, I don't want anyone to believe in what I'm sharing. Just simply resonate. Take what works for you and leave the rest. No belief needed here. We're conscious individuals seeking to expand consciously, infinitely, and the belief doesn't serve a being who seeks to become self-reliant. We're all here to become self-reliant. That's what makes this channel so unique. I am doing what I do because it's my purpose, and I want everyone who crosses paths with my work to feel exactly like that for themselves. That is where your power is. That is where your infinite potential is. So tap into it. And today's video will support that process for you if you utilize the knowledge. And remember, knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is. So if you're new here, we do cryptocurrency technical analysis and combine it with Gematria, Numerology, and Astrology to understand these markets. Feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell notification to stay updated when new videos come out. And make sure to give this video a like and share this channel with other conscious beings to help grow our community. And with that being said, let's take the clear pill. So let's just quickly recap the last video that I put out on April 12th, dated right here, and it was talking about this idea of April 13th and Bitcoin potentially hitting 31,000. So it was because I noticed in this decode a bunch of 13 and 31 connections. We have April 13th, we have March 13th, this being the 313 date, which is the palindrome of 31, and these dates being 31 days apart, and April 13th being your 103rd day of the year. With the rules of numerology, you're going to remove that 0 and you're going to come back to the number 13. And I finished off that decode by saying, since April 13th is tomorrow, let's see if Bitcoin gravitates to that number by the code, and it did. So we saw at about 2 a.m. into the 14th of April, which was still the 13th of April in Pacific time if you're living over there in California, and Bitcoin approached 31,000. On some charts, it came up to 31,100. I saw 31,035, 31,046 here on this index chart, which is all the Bitcoin charts combined. So it was amazing to watch that code come to life. And since here we are, it is officially the solar eclipse, as I mentioned in the intro of this video, and we just got to give a big congratulations to Bitcoin. It's finally in the solar cycle. We've been in a lunar cycle going all the way back since May of 2021, which was an eclipse that officially ended the alt season. If you remember that back then, altcoins rolled over at that time and pretty much have been in a perpetual downtrend since, whilst we saw Bitcoin had this bigger correction, and Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple of isolated projects made it up to a new higher high back on November 21st. But this was the start of the lunar cycle, and now we have officially ended it as of today. So just to quickly recap what this is all about, when we are in a lunar cycle, we are in a downtrend for the crypto market. And when we're in a solar cycle, we begin a trend reversal and an uptrend. We typically see our total bottom come in before the start of a solar cycle, and we also tend to see that as we get closer to a solar cycle, we have something called an automatic rally or a relief rally, which is also a bull trap. So we are perfectly moving in sync with the last two iterations of the Bitcoin cycles of 2019 and 2016. I've been talking about this now for about 6 months, so here we are, and now we've got this local pullback yesterday, and I want to get all into that in today's video, of course, but I want to focus more on the big picture. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on the intro of this video to say take notes, because we're going to be getting into a lot today. But just to show that Bitcoin did officially hit 31K into the day that we thought it would based on the code. It was beautiful to watch all those Gematria and Numerology connections come to life. But now that we're here in this solar cycle and we're at the solar eclipse, we got to pay attention to the now and set ourselves up moving forward. So we also have the lunar eclipse coming up on May 5th and 6th. So we're in fact in eclipse season. And we also have Mercury stationed retrograde tomorrow. Fun times. So let's open up this tab right here. And some of you might have never seen this chart before. It's my 247-day cycle chart. Warning, this is not traditional technical analysis by any means. This is just some thing I discovered. It's some wizard level shit, so you must be open-minded to it. But for some background on this gem that I found, it was back in May of 2022, almost a year ago, that I exposed this cycle in a Patreon video. And since then, it's continued to come to life, month by month, even a year after I discovered this and I shared it. So if you want more exclusive content and decodes and stuff like that, my weekly Red Pill podcast as well, those are available on patreon.com/watersabove for the mastermind community. The link is in the description below. And by the way, next week's Red Pill podcast is going to be lit. That'll be released this Sunday, April 23rd over on Patreon. I'm really excited to get into that. And if you've been a Patreon supporter lately, you've been seeing me talk a lot about this chart. So here we are. We're actually in a 247-day cycle as of yesterday. And you can see that marked right here on the chart. I'm just going to show a couple of iterations of what's happening here, but I want to, make this video the most value as possible and talk about moving forward and not worry so much about the past. But let's just show you how we have off of this day right here, which was the peak and actually the end of what looked like a short-term trend reversal, because we went into lower lows on this eclipse right here, the eclipse back in November. But from this peak, if I take over 247 days, it's going to show you that it was right there on yesterday's big pullback. Today we're at the 20th, so we've moved out of it. And if I look at a couple other pivots in the market following up from this, we're going to be able to identify these two dates right here, which is May 12th and May 18th. So pivoting off of this bottom right here on September 7th over 247 days, and it brings you right there to May 12th as well. I have this date marked out as well, which was the end of the Shemitah. That's Rosh Hashanah being over, and since this day right here, we've entered Jubilee. But now this day is the final pivot of interest for me, and that is what brings you to the 18th of May. Naturally, that is the day before the new moon. So right here, you can see the new moon on the 19th of May, and that's why this gets really exciting. So just to recap all of this, talking about the moons and eclipses and all of this wizard stuff, but trading into a new moon is a more bullish energy where we tend to see our microcycle tops, whilst trading out of a new moon is a more bearish energy leading into a full moon, give or take a 5-day window in either direction. So let me just show you a couple examples of this. For instance, today is the new moon, but if you go back to our microcycle top on April 14th, that was about 5 days ago. The new moon in March was March 21st. The microcycle top was 3 days later. The February new moon was February 20th, and the microcycle top was less than a day later, pretty much within a 1-day time. So these new moons are really solid for identifying when we'll get our microcycle tops, but we trade out of full moons bullishly into new moons. I just want to clear that up again. I've been talking about this now for 2 years, but we have a lot of new people to the channel. And remember, I'm speaking to everyone of all walks of life in different languages. I'm doing my best to be simple and give you guys the best value, but also share this esoteric wisdom. So to add even more accuracy to all of this, lately, since the past lunar eclipse in November, the lunar eclipse where FTX was ritualized and Sam Bankman-Fried, we have been seeing that specifically around the third quarter and the first quarter moons are our micro cycle lows. So the next third quarter moon coming up will be April 27th. And I want to just jump a little bit deeper into that date, but you can see right there, first quarter, April 27th. I'm going to pull that up right here. And we have a couple of things that are pointing out to me. For one, this will be the 117th day of the year, and Bitcoin, you can see right there, equals 117 in Gematria as well. We have to just think of this number 117 as the mirror of 711, which is a very powerful esoteric number. We'll be getting into that later, but getting back to this number 17, if you look at May 5th, which will be the date of our lunar eclipse, that also has a 17 date numerology, just standard date numerology. As well, April 27th is in the 17th week of the year. You can see that right there. Week 17 is April 24th through April 30th. So this key date that we're starting with, April 27th, in the 17th week, and it is connected to the lunar eclipse that's going to be coming up, 17 date numerology, and 1 plus 7 equals 8, and these are exactly 8 days apart with the 117th day of the year. Keep this all in mind, guys, because this is a big part of my coding system. And in my Patreon, the last Red Pill podcast I released, I talked about the following day from today, tomorrow, April 21st, and shared a lot of code around that. But we knew that everything around this solar eclipse moving into the lunar eclipse would be important. So let's also consider that April 27th is connected to Satoshi Nakamoto's last birthday by 22 days. 22 is a powerful master number, and I exposed the 22-day cycle a couple months ago that came to life exactly on the date that I told everyone, which was March 10th. So let me just quickly go into the charts right here. You have March 10th, and that was the same day that Silicon Valley Bank failed. And the connection here was between February 16th's microcycle top over 22 days to March 10th. Now, you can go in my past YouTube videos and you can learn all about this, but I've been talking a lot about these cycles within cycles and how to utilize these numerological connections to have more data to play with, and this could help you get more accurate in your interpretations of how the market will perform moving forward. And this stuff is really mind-blowing once you see it all come together. It's like a symphony. But getting back to April 27th, which will be this day right here, moving over 22 days, and that brings you to the new moon, May 19th. So I've actually been talking a lot about May 17th and May 19th. You could see it was exposed here on March 13th in a tweet that I made, May 17th, May 19th, 2023. Never forget. I have been talking about this for a while. I even talked about it in my Sell in May and Go Away Decoded, as well as in my recent decode that I released on Patreon called World Reserve Decoded. I shared a bunch of gems about the month of July and August and why I don't feel so good about those months regarding the market and global economy at large. Those two decodes combined made me feel more confident about May and potentially even early June for the markets to be in a decent condition overall. Now, crypto is isolated from all of this because crypto is really specifically moving on these lunar cycles and solar cycles. But since today is the solar eclipse and start of the solar cycle, I want to revisit the 2016 cycle. And this will be kind of a fun, exercise for us all. And we're going to be going over here to this cycle of 2016. Let me see if my chart will bring us back there. And we're going to be showing a couple of connections to consider. So here we are, and we actually had a couple of things go on in this time frame. We are looking at this peak right there from November 15th over to June 18th, all of 2016, a little bit of the end of 2015. But right here on March 8th, we actually had the solar eclipse that started the solar cycle. Then a couple of weeks later, we had on March 23rd, a lunar eclipse. So think pretty much from this dip right here over to here, we had the start of the solar cycle. And there was a little bit of a pullback leading into the eclipse, a nice little rally into April. We stayed a little bit sideways, but then just boom, shot up in a straight line through the end of May into June. And this whole time frame showed me that eclipse season was very neutral in this iteration of the start of the solar cycle. So this is something that I'm starting to become a lot more open-minded to, since especially back in 2015 was a end of a Shemitah year. So 2014 through 2015 was a Shemitah. Now 2021 through 2022 was an end of a Shemitah. So if you add that piece of data, that would be like saying we need to look at any data we have post Shemitah year, which is that 7-year cycle I always talk about, and we need to look at the eclipses after. And that was very, very profound information that I dropped, very far in advance to this all coming to life. It was how I was able to determine that we're more likely to get our bottom near the end of 2022, at the very start of 2023, and then we should start to have a relief rally leading into the solar eclipse on April 20th, which is today. And that's how it all played out. And this is like a 5 to 6 month play that I gave everyone before it even happened. So we're not doing anything incredibly fancy here. We're just looking at more esoteric applications of how this market works. It runs on astrology, right? So I just want to share how this 2015-2016 iteration of the automatic rally is compelling, especially with it ending in June. And then if you go to the 2019 iteration, it ended in June. I've been talking about this a lot lately because I've revealed that sell in May and go away decoded video, and I don't want to confuse people. But to be completely honest, we need to be open-minded to the past Bitcoin cycles, how it all works. And sell in May and go away is a stock market term. It's a term that comes from stock markets that goes back over 100 years, whilst with Bitcoin and crypto, we only have about 13 years of data, and most coins, we only have about 3 to 5 years of data. So I'm using everything here, to the best of my abilities to be able to determine how this goes. But this is really interesting now that we got to this start of the solar eclipse. We immediately see a pullback, but it's not actually been that dramatic. And we'll be getting into the TA to really smooth out all the edges and some of the questions that you guys probably have. But getting back to this concept of how June was the month for the 2016 and 2019 iterations, I just want to remind people, this is why the last decode that I released called World Reserve Decoded, I put a lot of time into investigating the month of July and why we seem to get these bigger pullbacks into July and August when we enter solar cycles. And it started to make a ton of sense now. And that's why I'm open-minded to June being an opportunity to consider for the finality of this automatic rally, using evidence from the past 2 Bitcoin cycles and overall historic market performance for the indices going back 90 years. And my study of how markets perform post Shemitah year, which we are now in. So y'all know I'm not playing games. I'm looking at 20 different metrics and reviewing all the data before I share it with you guys to give you the most streamlined and simplified version of the data, whilst combining all the esoteric methods I've acquired over the years to give you the most unique outlook on these markets. We're doing something very special here. So let's make sure to be open-minded in the process and work together as a community of decoders, analysts, coaches, and leaders to collaborate with all of our insights and methodologies. That's what separates the Waters Above Wolfpack from the rest. So before we get into the technical analysis, go ahead and give this video a like if you haven't already. Spread some love in the comments section. That's what we're all about here. Now, I opened up this chart on purpose because I want to quickly explain it. I think it could be very helpful for us. And this is from the all-time high. You have a little bit of a bull trap rejection here in April 2022, just about a year ago. And then you have a retest of the trend into earlier this year, about January 20th, around the January new moon, breaking out of it. And then after a short-term top in February, we back tested this into March 10th, that key date that I talked about, the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. When we broke above this high right here, it started to confirm a trend reversal. This was a horizontal resistance that was about 200 days in play. You could see right there, 215 days, and we broke out of it. So this was a very positive moment for the market, right there into the March new moon. But I want to show how we already back tested the outside of this trend line 2 times, a 500-day trend, and we've confirmed a bounce. This is amazing to consider. So even though we're getting the short-term pullback today, there's really nothing dramatic going on right now. This is just another day in the matrix for anyone that knows how to do TA. And I want to simplify this kind of stuff for you guys and just show you that TA is not that difficult. It's not that scary. It doesn't involve drawing all these lines and putting up like 20 indicators. If anything, when you see that kind of stuff, I urge a lot of you to run away. Because what helps people really gather the maximum amount of data and be able to see how this market will perform moving forward is the person's ability to use the least amount of tools to be able to interpret a lot of data utilizing just a few tools. And one of my favorite terms is bricolage. That is a French word, and it talks about essentially being able to create something with what you have available. Like if you stayed at a hostel or something and there was a kitchen with 10 ingredients, what could you make for dinner that night? Those are the most savvy people. And I urge people to get good at the fundamentals of TA before getting into all the indicators and all the, really acidic stuff that makes TA not so fun to do. And that's why I focus on Wyckoff method. Wyckoff method is how I was able to determine this bounce that we would get. So I've given a shout out to Richard Wyckoff, even though he's no longer with us. I don't take the credit for being able to determine this automatic rally. That was all his work. I just studied it. I studied under it. And it changed my whole perspective, and it changed my life actually, because I used it to become a professional trader before I even made a YouTube channel and during the beginning of my Mastermind course creation here in 2020. So big shout out to Richard Wyckoff. I'm a loyal, student of his work. I think it's a game changer and it really helped. And now that we're here, and now that I've shown you a couple of these things, breaking out of a 200-day horizontal resistance, breaking out after 2 back tests on this trend line that's 500 days in the making, a very strong bounce, clean at those levels. Now I want to zoom into this time frame right here and go over what I'm seeing. So on the other side of things, when we confirm the breakout of that macro resistance and started to confirm it as a support in the short term, breaking a resistance, now confirming it as a support, we've started to see rejections on this outside trend line here. So we have a new resistance, but lately we flipped it as support going back to March 17th. So I'm very, very open-minded into what's happening, because now, as of yesterday, we've just hit that trend line and we're holding the outside of it on daily closes. So if we really zoom in, you can see the way I drew the trend line was respecting closes. I think the closure data is way more important than just looking at wicks. You can do this really easily by transitioning away from candlesticks to area chart, and this will give you a much cleaner looking perspective. Anywho, this right now is doing 2 key things. One, it's testing the outside of this trend line, which was a prior resistance, potentially confirming it as a support. And then on the other side, you have this horizontal level of rejections right here on daily closes that we're testing right now, testing the prior horizontal resistance closes. This looks beautiful to me. Like, I would not start getting worried about this until Bitcoin closes dailies below 27,100. So just keep that in mind. Bitcoin doing this test right here is totally normal, par for the course. Let me pull up a couple of moving averages really quickly to just show you what's going on. And I want to make this video short today, by the way. I just want to, really come in here to share wisdom and calm words to make people see clearly during times of confusion. So I'm just going to quickly pull up a couple moving averages, and you could see right here that we have the 55 simple moving average, this white moving average right there, sitting at about 26,500. That's coming in at the lower wick right here of this candle on March 27th. So please be open-minded to that. If we were to have an extreme washout right now between now and the lunar eclipse, this is a very key level to hold. So if Bitcoin can hold this 55 moving average on the daily, I feel great. I think we're totally fine. If we start to close below that 55 simple moving average, that's where I would change my tune, and I would consider that, okay, we need to be open-minded to potentially more downside here, and this could be the short-term top. Now remember, a lot can happen between now and June, so this is just the start of like a very massive change of energy in the market, and we have to be okay, can't get overly dramatic right now and be making big game-changing decisions just off of a single day's price action. So I hope this helps people see a little clearer. I think right now we're holding higher lows. You got your low, higher low, higher low. It's still technically a higher low. We are holding the horizontal level, back testing a prior resistance, potentially confirming it as support. We have this chart over here I was sharing. Again, we have a prior resistance that has been a trend line in play now going for 90 days, still holding as a support. So really, I don't have too much more to say than that. I think this will be a video that'll be more just getting to the right people who really have the ears and the eyes to see, and they're really trying to become students of this market and not getting emotionally reactive to the moves. ETH pretty much doing the same exact thing. ETH's looking really good. I did feel a little weird about it coming up to 21,000. The fact that it did is almost identical to the last automatic rally, so we have to be weary of that. But given that Bitcoin has barely made anything close to the last iteration of the automatic rally, somewhere into like 40K would have been the finality. And given that it hasn't made it up there, and the fact that the chart's still looking healthy, and if we were to look at things like RSI, we're not overheated by any stretch of the imagination. So given all of that considered, and my decodes about May and even early June, we know that June in the past two automatic rallies is when we topped out. I think we're doing fine right now. So I'm gonna leave this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed the shorter video and the update. I wasn't really planning to make a video today. I was gonna save it to tomorrow, but just my schedule is wild right now with everything going on. So I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate all of your support. I'll be catching you all on Patreon for the next Red Pill podcast over at patreon.com/watersabove. And I'll be releasing that Red Pill podcast this Sunday with all of the information on the markets. And by you joining today, you'll also have access to the last Red Pill podcast I put out. And technically all that TA that I shared in that video is still looking pretty fine, still looking bullish. Nothing has really changed. It's just another day in the matrix. So I appreciate all of you guys. Wishing you a beautiful rest of your week. Much love.